Those pyramids, what science is now discovering beneath them, are nothing in comparison to what's actually there. The pyramid disclosure, it's at its infancy. There are so many people with a vested interest in us not knowing this stuff. I connected with the Galactics. I had this moment as I realized that's the Halls of Amenti. That's where it got really interesting. The Halls of Amenti were a means for humanity to ascend from the false matrix. They were creating almost an artificial version of the cosmic web to enable for interplanetary travel. We would think of those as Stargates. Your body, your DNA is the key code. It originated when the Lemurian crystal became activated. We originated from what we would think of today as cosmic, enlightened, godly beings. This is a quantum intelligence that we've lost touch with. There are going to be multiple disclosures coming up. It's what came to me, and I went, oh, this was the piece of the puzzle I was waiting for in order to speak about the literal depth that's lying underneath those pyramids, because I always had this visual of the pyramids, which are massive monolithic structures. I always had this visual that I couldn't understand, and my visual was these tiny little pinpricks sticking up on top of the Giza plateau and throughout the world. We'll talk about that because there's many, many pyramids other than the ones that we can see. And a sense that underneath those pyramids is the real structure. Those pyramids were almost like the lid on top of something way deeper, way bigger. So we were, for time immemorial, looking at the part of the pyramids that we could see and going, whoa, what were they used for? And we came up with all sorts of asinine theories like, oh, they're burial tombs for the pharaohs, which I think most light workers, most spiritual beings have a sense of intuition in them that says, I don't think so. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. And from an evidence basis, there is no evidence of pharaohs ever being buried inside of a pyramid. So there's always been this big question mark around what is that and what's really, really going on. So the recent discoveries that have come up is that the pyramids have underneath them massive structures that can now be scanned. So they're using a very advanced type of LiDAR that's able to go underneath the pyramids and check in to find that there are structures more than 600 meters deep below the pyramid. And we're looking at 8 columns. That's what so far they have shown, that there are 8 columns underneath the pyramid. Now, bear in mind, they're only looking right now at the Giza plateau. So they're looking underneath Khafre's pyramid in particular, and they're seeing these 600 meter long, what they're calling pillars. And beneath those, they are looking at a structure that is at least another 2 kilometers long. And that's staggering. To think of something beneath the pyramids that is 2 kilometers long, and those culminate in massive chambers. And of course, the scientists are looking at this, scratching their heads and saying, we don't know. We don't know what it's for, and it evokes all of the arguments among Egyptologists and archaeologists saying it is and it isn't, it can be and it can't be. There's irrefutable proof and there's no proof. These are the debates that the academics are now stepping into. But that's what allowed me the little nudge, the little intuitive nudge that said, okay, Kerry, it's time to go deeper and start looking at an intuitive level at what is sitting underneath there, and that would satisfy that something in me that always knew that there was a deeper story beneath the pyramids than what we had originally seen.
That is the perfect segue. What is going on? What did you tune into? What have you felt into?
So that's where it got really interesting, because now remember I said to you, I'd always felt that. I had always felt that when we look at the pyramids, we're looking at these little pinpricks on top of the surface, but I could sense there was something underneath it, but couldn't quite get into the depth. So now I had license, you could say, I had permission, you could say, to really dive intuitively, to dive deep. And when I did, I connected with the Galactics, who you might remember from the last time that I was sitting with you. We spoke about my connection with the Galactics, who are a group of non-terrestrial beings, 5D and beyond, and they have an amazing way of teaching and sharing and being with me. And their way is this. Their way is, I'm not going to give you the answer, Kerry, but I'm going to sit in a field of truth and share the field of truth with you, and you can dive into that field with me. So that's what we did. We sat together in a beautiful meeting space, and I dove deep into the energy of truth that they showed me. And I almost got a shock. You know that feeling, Amrit, when you have like cold water thrown on your face and you want to go, that's what I had. I had this moment as I realized that's the halls of Amenti. That's what's underneath the pyramids. And I could obviously feel from their smug joy at the moment that I had this revelation. They were like, yeah, she's getting it. She's getting it. And that showed me an even bigger picture, which was that these pyramids that we're talking about, which are the main three on the Giza plateau, they're part of a massive, massive network. Those pyramids, what science is now discovering beneath them, those massive chambers, etc., those are nothing in comparison to what's actually there. So in other words, what I'm saying to you is, they can say to us, oh, we think that this runs 2 kilometers deep, but in actual fact, it's way, way deeper than the 2 kilometers. It's way wider than what they can currently speculate, because these halls of Amenti were massive structures. And we'll talk about their purpose, no doubt, as we go forward. But underneath almost every pyramid on the planet, there are these underground chambers, because a pyramid is so much more than we ever imagined it was.
So you mentioned the halls of Amenti, and you got this download that this is what's going on. So you've got these 8 cylinders underneath the Khafre pyramid, and there's these 2 kilometer long tunnels. Are those the halls, or are the pyramid, are the pillars the halls? Like, give me the bit of how you visualize
what they're seeing is a fragment that is part of the greater structure that is the halls of Amenti. So when we think of what the halls of Amenti are, and then we try to take what they're seeing, it's kind of like looking at a door to a building and then trying to make sense of how that building works, because all you can see is the door. In other words, what they're seeing right now is just a tiny part of the halls of Amenti. Now, the halls of Amenti served multiple purposes. Some of the purposes of the Hall of Amenti, and perhaps why those halls are so known and revered, is because the halls of Amenti were a means for humanity to ascend from the false matrix. In other words, it was a way in which we could actually leave the false matrix when we were done learning and done growing. The halls of Amenti served as a transport point to exit us from the false matrix. They also served as healing chambers. They served as pretty much anything that your intention would want it to conjure. So, for example, it could be a defense mechanism. Let's just say that the city was being attacked. Halls of Amenti are now going to become a massive shield, and they're going to become defensive. They could be sound chambers that would provide healing. They could be energetic centers that would power up. We think free energy, the little bit that we know right now in our so-called modern day science about free energy is minuscule in comparison to what they were capable of doing back there. They could generate power and electrical grids without any of the grids that we have right now. They were operating off of free energy structures, and all of that was coming from those that we call the halls of Amenti. Also, those halls were part of using that top pyramidal structure as teleportation devices. So they helped us, the human population, when we were done on the false matrix, and it was time, almost like graduation, you could say. That was an exit point. But for those who had helped to engineer the matrix, part of engineering the false matrix was that they were now going to be cut off from the organic matrix. The organic matrix, which is the original creation template, has built into it multiple cosmic connections between planets. We would think of those as stargates. These are natural node points or connection points that operate in and I want to really differentiate here, in a natural or organic matrix, not the one we were born to. The one we were born to is a false matrix. So in other words, we didn't have that ability to move between planets. So the beings who had engineered the matrix, they lost their ability to go back and forth. And that's part of what they were doing with those pyramidal structures as well. They were using them as teleportation chambers. So they were mimicking or simulating the cosmic web that belongs to the organic matrix. They were creating almost an artificial version of the cosmic web to enable for interplanetary travel. So there are countless things that those halls or chambers were used for.
So they're quantum mechanical structures that facilitate work within the false matrix. Could they have been used to facilitate your way out of the false matrix?
Definitely. So when we use a Stargate, there is always a key code that allows that Stargate to open for you and move you from one point to another. Now, your body is the key code. So it's not like you punch in a sequence, right? It's not like you punch in numbers, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Now I'm going to be able to exit the matrix because I know the code. No, your body, your DNA is the key code. So you would stand in front of the teleportation device and it would read your field. And if your field could be in cohesion with 5D, which is another way of saying if your field could be in cohesion with truth, with love, with higher thought, with higher levels of harmony, if you could be in that octave, then that Stargate would read your field and say, oh, and it would open up for you and then deliver you into what we now call 5D, or another word we can use is the organic matrix. It could then open up the Stargate to you and deliver you to what many people would call home. It could take you home.
Is this where your heart's being weighed against a feather, in your opinion?
Yes, very much so. Very, very much so. In fact, on the YouTube video that I put out where I spoke about the pyramids, I said that's where it came from, this idea that the Egyptians had about exactly that, the heart being weighed against the feather at the time of death. But please remember that the ancient Egyptians, or those that we think of as the ancient Egyptians, so think about the pharaohs' names that we know, the big pyramids that we're talking about, Khafre being one of them, they weren't the creators of the pyramids. They weren't the creators of those myths. They were the inheritors. They inherited those pyramids. They were there long before those pharaohs were. The pharaohs came in and said, oh, there's this wonderful big structure. I'm going to put my name on it because nobody else is using it right now. So I'm going to pretend that this is mine and it will now be my legacy. So we have a lot of misconception about who the builders of the pyramids were and who they were built for and what their purpose was, but they were certainly not built for or built by the pharaohs. The pharaohs inherited them. So a lot of their myth, like the idea that your heart is going to be weighed against a feather at the time of death, a lot of their myth comes from their understandings and misunderstandings of the technology that they had inherited.
I mean, makes me wonder what's been happening through the ages and through the eons, right? Like, were they aware of what they inherited? Because they've obviously got hieroglyphs, so they've aware to some degree of what's going on, but then we've lost information since the points of the hieroglyphs as well. So you look at what it would have taken as a civilization to create something like that and then to be able to interpret it, you know, and then now we've lost interpretation, but interpretation's resurfacing. Let's talk about that for just a sec, like later. Yeah. But the loss of, I guess, you want to call it scientific information, or what do you call this information? The loss of information.
You know, we don't even have words for what this is. That's how archaic our language is and our concepts are. So imagine, we're trying to understand a very advanced civilization through the lens of a very archaic mindset. And that's very contrary to how we've seen ourselves. We've seen ourselves perhaps very arrogantly and perhaps without justification as these modern day scientific superheroes, cutting edge of technology. That's where we imagine we are. So we perceive, based on where we think we are, we perceive everything that came before us as archaic. We think of the caveman being our ancestor. The caveman is not our ancestor. The caveman is a part of the journey, but not the origin of the journey. We originated from what we would call gods, what we would think of today as cosmic, enlightened, godly beings. These are our ancestors. Some of them had really nefarious intentions for humanity, and some of them did not. Some of them wanted humanity to prosper. Some of them wanted humanity to do really well and to grow and to evolve and to use the halls of Amenti to return back to 5D. Others of them wanted to keep humanity almost as a fuel source to themselves. So there was a lot of infighting with these cosmic beings, but the point remains, those are our ancestors. And part of our journey, our human journey has taken so many twists and turns from the caveman era. We've devolved and evolved so many times. But something that you said, Amrit, was about the hieroglyphs. And I just wanted to mention, imagine if you inherited the pyramids, and as you inherited the pyramids, the walls were blank. Aren't you going to put your graffiti on the walls, right? If you had access to this massive structure, you're going to go put your own graffiti on it, and that we then are going to interpret your graffiti and say, hey, you're the creator of the pyramids because it's your graffiti that's on them. Maybe it's not, though.
Inspired soul, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that button, hit the bell notification icon, and help us championing love, positivity, wisdom, and wellness around the planet together. Thank you so much in advance for your love and support. Yeah, okay. And why now does this information finally start to tip in a different direction? So where are we at right now that gives us this opportunity to be like this information surfacing and there's more coming into our awareness? And you look at back to where we started the conversation, like things are shifting, things are evolving at present. What is it about this time that's allowing such information to come? Is the consciousness evolving?
And this is what I wish more people could see. We, as in the majority of people on the planet right now, are the cause. For all the revelation that's going on right now, we're the cause. Why? Because we are disclosure. We had it upside down and inside out. We always thought disclosure was going to be given to us by an external voice or an external authority, or it was going to be on the media one day and somebody was going to go, hey, this is what's really going on in the world, and then we'd be free and then we'd be liberated. But this was an idea of the false matrix, that said, humanity, you yourself are not powerful. The leaders are the powerhouses. That's what we believed. That's what we were programmed to believe. The truth is the exact opposite. When we begin to disclose to ourselves that we are, as an individual, a source of power, a source of love, a source of creativity, a source of consciousness, a source of compassion, a source of healing. When we get up off our knees and start realizing that we are the ones we waited for, then we become disclosure. And we do that quietly. I never put a neon light above my house when I started turning into a deeper level of my power. And I don't think you did either. And I don't think the listeners did either. I think we just did this quietly in our own solemn spaces, sometimes caused by massive dark nights of the soul, sometimes spontaneously, we just began to receive more of our own essence. And that's disclosure. And that builds an energy that begins to reform the external reality in such a way that it reflects our disclosure, it reflects our awakening. And the reflection is now beginning to show us, hey, there's something deeper underneath those pyramids. And when we start getting into the depth of what's underneath those pyramids, we're starting to get to the depth of what's underneath our consciousness. We start coming into a deeper alignment with ourselves at our literal energetic roots. We start reconnecting with a deeper truth of who we are, not who we were, who we are.
This brings to light a point you were mentioning earlier, which is, like our body literally contains the DNA, which is the code that when you step in, activates certain things in certain spaces. This revealed a lot. I mean, it sounds fantastical, but I want to double click on it because as we're collectively going through this and collectively more and more things are emerging into our awareness, maybe it's not as fantastical as it sounds.
Well, I was going to say it's not as fantastical as it sounds, but then I thought, no, wait a minute, we are actually fantastical. Just don't realize. We just don't realize how fantastical we are. And it's like we want to dismiss the reality, that says we're fantastical because that can't be true. But that's actually our nature. Our nature is that we are cosmic, delicious miracles, every single one of us. And we've been snipped off, cut off and separated from this majesty that we come from. We come from a divine grace that is so big we can't comprehend what it is, and therefore we can't comprehend who we are. We've been snipped at the crown, there, literally disconnected from our totality, which is also why those halls of Amenti were covered up. Remember that external reality is a reflection of our internal reality. So when we were severed at the crown and lost connection to our divinity, then external reality reshaped itself to show us, look, there's just pyramids, nothing important here other than some pharaoh who was buried a long time ago who may have had an ego problem because he needed this big monument devoted to him. We got all of these untruths and half-truths because it suited the reflection of where we were at the time. But as we wake up and realize, my God, we really are these fantastical things, then we're going to start having more and more disclosure. The pyramids are just a part of it. The pyramids are just a moment of our disclosure. If we keep looking at external reality right now and how it's reshaping itself, we're going to begin to see that the entirety of our reality is crumbling, number one, but number two, it's crumbling so that it can reform itself. It's crumbling so that it can reshape itself. This is all part of us stepping out of the false matrix. I think a lot of people had there's a fantastical idea. A lot of people had a fantastical idea that they were going to step out of the false matrix and it was just going to be like this little hop, skip, and a dance. Like, ding, look at me, But actually, you first collapse the matrix. And that's the scary moment, isn't it? When the shards of the false matrix start falling at your feet and the debris of the false matrix becomes more and more apparent, there's some knee-jerk response in us then that says, uh-oh, it's falling apart. My life's falling apart, we say. But it's not. Our old life is falling apart. Our old matrix is falling apart. And if we can differentiate that, then we don't have that same desire to try to glue, for want of a better way of saying it, we're trying to glue back the shards of an old reality that we desperately wanted to be free of. We desperately wanted to break it down. But now we've got to let it crumble. So for me, the pyramids is really just a part of a a big transformation in consciousness, the big shift in consciousness.
You said before that the halls of Amenti sort of morph themselves and avail themselves to the user and the human beings as their intention sort of emerges. So now that this information is emerging, what can you deduce about our collective intention potentially at this time?
So, first of all, at the collective level, we're starting to see our origins. Where did we come from? We can think of them as giants figuratively or literally. We came from these monumental beings of consciousness. That's the beginning of the reshaping of who we are. Why? Because our story that we were born to told us, listen, we're born of original sin, which is not a great way to be born, that tells me I can't be a very good being. These were the ideas that were sitting inside the collective. We were born to ideas of smallness, essentially. And now what's being revealed is a greatness to our lineage, which means that we now have to start looking inside of ourselves and go, okay, so if I am the offspring of a once great civilization, then how do I find my potential? And how do I regain access to my abilities? If that kind of technology was my everyday life, and you asked me earlier, what's the word for this? And I said to you, there really are no words, because this is a quantum intelligence that we've lost touch with. So we don't even have the language to describe the quantum intelligence that we're talking about when we talk about these pyramids, which, remember I said earlier, they are scattered throughout the world. Every country, without fail, has pyramids. Most of them, however, are buried, just like the story of our cosmic lineage is buried. Some of these pyramids are in Antarctica. Some of these pyramids are under the sea. Some of them are under the sand. Some of them are covered up with grass, and we're told jungle and foliage, and we're told stories about them, like, oh, there's nothing to see here. Don't look over there. We were given distraction techniques. For example, in China, there's massive pyramids that the government to this day denies and says, no, it's just natural landscape. But when you look at it, you can see these are pyramidal structures. And it's not so much the pyramid, it's what lies underneath the pyramid that the powers that were, I don't want to say the powers that be, because they're not the powers that be, but rather the powers that were didn't want us to access what was beneath. The pyramids themselves were never the issue. It's what's beneath the pyramids that they didn't want us to have access to. For a large part, yes, they are covered with debris. Like, even if we went in to excavate those underground structures that we're seeing underneath the Giza plateau, we're going to find a lot of it has been buried. A lot of it is going to be very difficult to excavate. And when I told members of my online community this, they said to me, oh, but that's so sad, because that was our escape route. That's where we used to ascend from. And I said, yeah, but we're not reliant on that technology. That was just a convenient means that we once had to ascend from the third to the fifth dimension, forgetting, of course, that our body is the highest technology. Our body is capable of transforming itself essentially into a Stargate that would perform exactly the same function as all of these massive underground chambers would have, So we've lost nothing, is the point. We've lost nothing.
This podcast is brought to you by my one-to-one mentorship. The podcast is designed to inspire your evolution onwards, upwards, and inwards. And if you're ready to dive in even deeper and evolve your career, your leadership, and business in a conscious direction, and you believe that alignment to your purpose and your soul's direction is the only way to truly thrive into your highest potential, and right now you can feel that guidance, mentoring, and coaching would be of support, then my one-to-one mentorship, coupled with our incredible conscious group masterminds, is here for you. Thousands of people have evolved through my mentoring over the last 10 years. It is, after all, my highest calling, and here's what they have to say about how it's transformed their life.
It's a blend of what I would call hustle and magic.
I really felt like a brother who I could reach out to when I was in need.
Suddenly things take least effort and I see multiple opportunities.
He's not sugarcoating, he's not looking at things with rosy glasses. He asks the hard questions which we need to have asked.
He made me feel like there's someone who believes in me. That connection is much more profound than just being coached.
If you truly believe in the potential that you have as a human being, you would definitely invest in coaching.
So if you're ready to dive in even deeper to take your inspirations and truly evolve, then make your way over to my website at amritsandhu.com. I'll put a link in the description below. You don't have to go it alone. There's one-to-one mentoring and an incredible community mastermind of conscious leaders, entrepreneurs, and people transforming their careers and business into full alignment with their soul's highest calling, creating a life that inspires them on the deepest level, living into their greatest impact. Make your way over to my website, amritsandhu.com, send me a personal message and let me know why this is right for you right now, and apply to work together. Let's take your business, career and direction practically to the next level. Link to amritsandhu.com in the video description below. I look forward to seeing you there. Can we talk about that, Kerry? Can we talk about the squeeze and the sovereignty? Because the key thing in there is, as you mentioned in your video, and I'm just going to pull that piece of information into here, which is, you know, the beings that were like in their depravity, like, yeah, was so depraved they depraved us of the opportunity to, like, you know, there were certain spaces and places, technologies that we could use to go to where we needed to and do what we needed to, however so. And then that they shut that down in order to sort of like incubate us into our own sort of, incubate us further. And it's interesting because what you're referring to here is like our bodies, like even in the face of all that, the word you used was depravity. Somehow even that then with all of that squeeze, it puts pressure on the individual once again to reclaim their own sovereignty once again though. So even in its shadow, it really enforces a light almost. Would you put it that way, Tashwood, or am I just reaching for stuff?
No, I would absolutely agree with you. I would absolutely agree. I think that there's a perfect metaphor that's going on right now, wherein we used to externalize our power. We used to externalize our power and say, I need this Stargate, or I need this external device, and we still do it today. We say, I need this crystal, I need this, whatever it is. We keep outsourcing our power and avoiding confronting the real truth, which is I am the source of my own power. But we've become very afraid of power, ours and others. So because we've become afraid of power, we've become afraid of the misuse of power. And unfortunately, that's led a lot of human beings to the conclusion that power equals corruption, and I don't want any part of it. So we're rejecting our power instead of welcoming it. And here's the thing, with what we're seeing with these halls of Amenti, there's no way that we can ascend without being powerful. We can't do this anymore through the halls of Amenti because they've been damaged. They have been. Even now, if they're excavated, they're still not going to be operational to the degree that they once were. So yes, it's going to be interesting. We could just say that it's going to be interesting to excavate and see what's there. Will we understand what we excavate? No, we won't. But it'll be a fun exercise. The real inner excavation is that almost like we're being forced into reclaiming our cosmic power and really viewing the body in a very different way. This thing is a Stargate. Now look at most people's relationship with their body. Most people's relationship with their body, and I see it a lot in my comment section when I do videos and I talk about the body, people say things like this. They say, oh, well, my body is defective. Imagine that word. Imagining that your body can't ascend because this is what people say to me. They say, for example, I've had cancer, or I've got a pacemaker, or I've had this operation, or I'm paralyzed, or whatever it is. They say, well, my body is defunct and defective and therefore I'll never ascend. This is absolutely untrue. Your body is made to regenerate. Your body is the ultimate quantum cosmic device. Your body is going to mimic everything that you think exists out there. We've just never seen it done. We've never imagined the possibility that our body can regenerate to the degree that it can and will in our lifetime. So as we see what's been buried underneath the pyramids, there's a moment of loss. There's a moment where we have to grieve and say, damn it, we've lost a beautiful healing technology that we once had. We've lost the connection to our higher consciousness through these quantum technologies. So there's a brief moment of grief and loss there. However, it then makes us shift our focus into, what else do I have? Oh, right, my body. Now I have nowhere to externalize my power to. I can only internalize my power in the sense that I have to claim it at the inner level. My DNA is a cosmic, ancestral, living library of who and what I really am. And my DNA is inside every single cell. Every single cell is strewn with the original signature energy of my higher consciousness, and I can access that DNA. So it gives us nowhere to outsource our power anymore.
You said as we discover more and more of these findings, where they're not going to turn back on the way that they previously were, but it does really paint a picture for where we've been. I mean, it does provide some scope back into the picture for what's possible as well, though. They do serve as a source of inspiration, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that's where we get to reclaim our potential. And we get to say, well, could we rebuild these, and should we rebuild these? And if you ask me, Kerry, should we rebuild them? I would say no. I would say it wouldn't serve us in any way, because we have this proclivity to outsource power, and that has been standing in our way. So there's a perfection, there is a divine perfection here that we have to turn inward, essentially. But it's still going to be supremely interesting to see the actual scope of our potential. You know, I just want to share this with you, not because I'm poking fun at the person who wrote it, but because I want to highlight how we've been dumbed down in our society. So I put out the video that you probably saw on YouTube talking about the pyramids. And one of the things I said, it was a very brief, like 20-minute video, so I didn't go into too much depth. But one of the things that I said was the pyramids were used as a means of teleportation. Somebody in the comment section said, you know, Kerry, I really love you and I don't doubt what you're saying, she said. But I just battle to imagine how these megalithic monuments, which weighs tons and tons and tons, how could these have gone zooming through the sky? And I thought, oh my God, we have become so dumbed down. No dissing her. This is where our minds have gone. We've become very, very literal. We have forgotten that we're energetic before we're physical. And we exist as energetic beings in a physical world, but we're not only physical. And we can shift energetically and we can move energetically. And that's what I was alluding to when I spoke about the pyramids being used as teleportation devices. At no point did I intend anybody to understand that the pyramids themselves would go zooming through the sky. But that's an example of how we can no longer even comprehend our nature, our fantastical nature. We can no longer even have space to consider our true potential. And the more time that we spend in stillness and in our heart, the more we regain connection with a higher intelligence that shifts us out of the smallness that we got squeezed into and returns us to our rightful place as cosmic creator gods. A lot of people don't like it when I refer to our potential as cosmic creator gods. But this is who we are, and we can deny it all we want to, but it remains the truth of who humanity is.
Inspired soul, lumen being, join in on the conversation. If you're liking this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and a like. And also, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Kerry's really active on socials as well. So if you're leaving comments and questions for her directly, you can leave them in the comments. And if you've got any questions that you'd like me to ask the next time she comes on, we'll be talking about the pole shifts. Absolutely ask those questions below and I'd be honored to ask them on your behalf. And what are you taking away from today's conversation? We cover so much ground. I'd love to hear what are your takeaways. Back to Kerry. I mean, the teleportation conversation is really fascinating because even with quantum computing where it's reached at the moment, 2025, we're unable to teleport matter and people, but we are able to teleport the state of a particle from one place to another. So the energetics actually can be communicated across time and space in real time through quantum computing. And I mean, that's us at 2025. I don't know where we get to down the line, but it is pretty fascinating. And to your point, like the teleportation, the energetics, understanding that stuff. I mean, it's fascinating to contemplate and try and wrap it. And obviously, and to your point, the little old head has a real tough time wrapping itself around such concepts because it thinks literal in matter. Yeah.
And this is what we all, I think, need to accept, is that at the linear level, everybody's brain is going to fritz and fry at some point when we try to contemplate the enormity of who we actually are and what we are the inheritors of. We are the inheritors of this massive cosmic lineage, but it can't be segmented into a linear, literal form, which is really because we've lived in the false matrix for so long. And the false matrix was a mental prison. And in a mental realm or a mental prison that you cannot escape from, you can only understand things in a very limited, linear, literal way. That was it. That's what we had access to. And we imagined that we were very clever. We imagined that we were very advanced. It's only as we step out of the mental prison that we're going to be able to start really thinking again to our true potential. Right now, what we call intelligent is still a highly dumbed down version of who we were. And that's not an insult to us at all. It's actually a beautiful thing that highlights how much potential we have to even transcend what AI is doing right now. You know, we look at AI and some of us get a little bit scared. Some of us get a little bit daunted, like, whoa, this is a scary potential. It can be. Of course, it can be used nefariously, but we don't see ourselves as able to meet the intelligence of AI, and yet we can. It's just a much higher, it's a very different kind of intelligence that we have lost access to. Just like we lost access to the halls of Amenti and all of these quantum technologies, we lost access to our higher intelligence. And that's also part of what we get to switch back on again. And it's when we meditate, it's when we go into stillness that we now are actually slipstreaming out of the mental prison into these higher realms. Then we come out of what we think of as, for example, 10 minutes of silence or a 20-minute meditation. We come out of that and we simply hold a different alignment. And now we're going to start understanding things at a deeper level. Maybe our spouse, maybe our children, maybe our human society. We're going to start understanding them in a different level and say, oh, I don't know why I didn't see it this way before. I don't know why I was so limited in my perspectives before. We won't realize that that's actually what we're doing. We're actually stepping out of the prison of the false matrix every single time that we get into an energetic communication with ourselves in the form of meditation or stillness or whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about what you're describing here. You've used the word Stargate a few times. Can you elaborate on what you mean by it? Because you're calling us home into our bodies, even serving as a Stargate. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So we've got, and this is our human language, we've got 3 ideas of Stargate. We've got this word called wormhole. we've got a word called portal, and we've got a word called Stargate. So a wormhole is basically a portal that has been man-made. That's what a wormhole is. A Stargate and a portal. Like I said in the beginning, these are both natural extensions of living in the divine universe. In the divine universe, everything is connected, and it's a really beautiful visual that I want to paint for you. Imagine the divine universe as God's original creation, and it is the most spectacular picture that your mind can conjure of all of the galaxies and all of the stars. But imagine that between every single star and every single star cluster and every single galaxy, there are strands of golden thread. That's what I mean when I'm talking about the cosmic web. These strands of golden thread are the cosmic web, which is kind of like a very harmonious super transportation system that links everything, because everything in creation is connected. Now, on our planet, because we've been in the false matrix for so long, that's all been taken down. We've been disconnected from that. It's part of what we're in the process of reestablishing. But nonetheless, those Stargate and portal systems were taken down. We still have some semblance, you might find this interesting, we still have some semblance of that cosmic web, but it doesn't lead off planet anymore. So what we have is a cosmic web that can lead you from a portal point to another portal point on the same planet. So on our planet Earth, we still have, because we know about Bermuda Triangle, so this shouldn't be too difficult for people to understand, we have certain, we think of them as hotspots or energy points on our planet where weird things take place and where, you're going to get weird readings and weird signals coming from. These are the still existing on-planet portal and Stargate system that still survives, but it won't lead off-planet, at least not for the foreseeable future. That'll only come in probably after ascension, where we get that full cosmic web access back. So there are some beings that still have access to the Stargate system. We think of Bigfoot or Yeti, whatever word we want to use for these fourth dimensional beings, they use, and they're very aware of the transportation system. So they actually have access through their DNA, because remember what I said, your DNA is the key code to these living Stargate systems. Now, when we lost access to the cosmic web, that's when the technologies began to be built, like the pyramids and the halls of Amenti, that would serve almost as a man-made mimicry system, a copy system of the original cosmic web. So we needed to have some kind of connection to the other false matrices, because the false matrix is a universe, not quite as big as a universe, but it's a very big system that has multiple planets, not just planet Earth on it. So that's what the pyramids were doing, and that's why we can see pyramids on Mars. That's why we can see what we think of as pyramids on other planets and go, well, that's a bit weird. Why is there a pyramid on Mars? Well, because it's all been part of that man-made attempt to induce a cosmic web into the false matrix system. Our body, however, is the ultimate Stargate. Now, remember what I said in the beginning? I said we were snipped off, cut off, or disconnected here at the crown. And when that happened, it severed our connection to what I want to describe to you as the cosmic being. So when you look in the mirror, what do you see? You see the human being. And specifically, you see the human being that's been living inside the false matrix. And the best way I can explain this to you is to say to you, imagine that reflection you're seeing in the mirror when you look at you, imagine that that's 1% of the totality of you. But the 99% of you, which is the cosmic being, is what you've lost contact with, what you've lost connection with. Yes, in the past, the pyramids could help you They could help you to reconnect, but we don't have that right now, which means what I said earlier, we now have to go direct, right? We've got to go direct to source, which is within us. So we have, when we are restored here at the crown, when we have restored our energetic grid, we then have connection to our own cosmic web. Because everything in creation is a microcosm of the original creator. So if the original creator encoded into creation this beautiful cosmic web, remember the gold filaments that connect everything? And you're a part of the creator's original creation, then albeit that your inner cosmic web is dormant right now, it still exists. You simply have lost connection with it. But as you gain connection to yourself, you gain connection to that cosmic web again. That's when your Stargate becomes your physical body. And now, guess what you can do? Now you can open your heart and travel. And when the heart and the pineal gland, those two Stargate points, when they come into alignment, you can go to any dimension. You have lost limitation and gained open access to all of creation once more. That's why we've been so shut down at the level of the heart and the level of the pineal gland. It's almost like there was this purposeful malalignment interwoven into the structure of the false matrix so that the heart and the pineal gland could never meet. Because these are the two strongest Stargates, that when they are aligned, in other words, they speak the same language, they're in the same harmonic. When they are aligned, then you become able to traverse through multiple dimensions, and you essentially get rewired and restored back to your original signature energy.
I can feel so much in what you're saying as inspiration to try and do the work to recalibrate oneself.
Yeah. That's why it's so damn important. This is the work. You are the work.
The archetype of this spiritual warriorship, though, is really like, because it doesn't seem like it's not something you don't have to fight for. It seems like there's actually a whole warriorship for your spirituality that's at play here.
You see, and it's a word, again, like I said to you earlier, so many people have disowned their power. People disown spiritual warrior. They say, oh no, I don't want to be a warrior. A warrior goes to battle. I don't want to go fight. I'm here for peace. I'm here for love. I'm here for happiness. We've got this incorrect perception of what spiritual warrior means. Spiritual warrior is not the dude on the field that's going to go chop your head off. That's not what the spiritual warrior is. The spiritual warrior is not here to fight anything, but here to face everything. And that takes more courage than standing on the battlefield with a sword in hand to face yourself, which is the true job of the spiritual warrior. And it does require such a summoning of courage to sit with yourself right now. Why do you think people scroll mindlessly on social media? So that they avoid sitting with themselves. So that they have, remember I said the purposeful disconnection between the heart and the pineal gland? It's like this. In the false matrix, the heart is pulled this way. The pineal gland is pulled that way. So they are in such malalignment to each other that many people would imagine it's hopeless to even try to bring them back online again. But the spiritual warrior can do that. The spiritual warrior can bring the heart and the pineal back online again. And part of the job of that spiritual warrior is face yourself, my beauty. Face yourself, my love. Face everything that you disowned. Face the shame and the blame and that which you've disowned, run from, imagined was bad and horrid and weak or cruel about you. It's so easy to point our fingers right now and say, this politician is bad, that person is bad, that organization is wrong, this event is inappropriate. Just drop all of that for a moment. Let it be wrong later on. Go back to it if you need to, but just take time to drop the blame, drop the shame associated with the blame. And then we realize, oh my God, that was actually me projecting my own stuff onto external sources because I couldn't own it and I couldn't claim it. Then we stop complaining about what we want other people to do and we start becoming the change. See, I say many things on social media and people often write to me and they say, oh, Kerry, you make it sound so easy. Because I say that. I say, stop looking for the change, be the change. And then they'll say, you make it sound so easy. It is, actually. It is. And yet that which is the easiest, we often find so painfully difficult. Because if we were to drop all of the external blaming and all of the external moaning that we do and just face ourselves, then we would face discomfort and realize that we've become enslaved by the notion of comfort. If people say to me, Kerry, who's the master of the false matrix? Is it money? Is money the master? I say, no, comfort is. Comfort, because we run away from facing anything that could make us uncomfortable. Any emotion that we feel a little bit icky and sticky about, we project it at other people. We've become enslaved to this notion of discomfort and we avoid it at all costs. But if we realize, oh my God, discomfort is actually negligible. Actually, if I sit with, for example, my own shame at something I did when I was a kid, or even if it's something I did yesterday, whatever, if I sit with my own shame, you better believe it's uncomfortable, but I'm not going to die. I'm not going to fall over. My nose isn't going to bleed. I'm not going to start convulsing. I'm going to make it. And most people don't even know that they're going to survive discomfort because they haven't let themselves dive in there. They've become so convenience orientated. And they've become so insistent on being mollycoddled into a field of fantasy wherein they never have to face themselves. They only have to face the wrongness of others, which of course is part of that purposeful disempowering of the human spirit. That's how humanity's been dominated. They've been given comfort and said, just stay here in your little comfort zone. There's a nice little blankie in your comfort zone. And if anyone tries to remove that blankie, then they're the bad guy. And you better spend the rest of your life hating them and devoting yourself to their removal or them changing or something about them. So we've been rendered powerless and we've kind of gone along with it, not realizing how very accessible our power was, but it was always going to be uncomfortable. Big, fat, hairy deal. If you're uncomfortable, you'll be just fine.
I think that's going to stay with me forever. A spiritual warrior isn't here to fight anything. He/she is here to face everything. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Kerry, there's obviously, you're giving us plenty of tools here in terms of how to actually drop blame, shift shame, and, but there's only so much you can do in a podcast. You obviously, that you go super deep and, you've referred to it as a really sacred container that you have online as well.
Yeah.
I mean, people tuning into this podcast are probably going to want to go deeper a little bit. Maybe it's incumbent upon you to sort of share a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Look, I think it's important because there is only so much in terms of information that I can share that's going to really give you the breakthrough. To me personally, words, they're great because words allow me to teach people and to convey messages. But the real shift happens with energetic work where we go beyond the words, beyond the conversation. So I've created an entire online community to do exactly that. And I meet with my online community every single week. I am so in love with them, so devoted to them. These people are the spiritual warriors of planet Earth. They are the spiritual warriors. And, you know, you're not going to see them on screen when you come and you join the weekly calls. You're only going to see my mug on screen. It's kind of boring week after week. There's Kerry, there's Kerry, there's Kerry. And sometimes people say, give us a break. You know, we want to meet other people that are in this container, which, by the way, is called the Plasma Light Tribe. And I say to them, I get that, but the PLT are a growing group of spiritual warriors that we all get to connect with, meaning even if you're not in the PLT, just knowing that there are people on planet Earth right now who are the ripple. You can feel them. You don't have to see their face. You can feel the ripple of change alive right now. So those are the people that I actively work with. And then I give them so many tools. I've also got an online shop, Amrit, which has got so many courses. And one of the really powerful ones, in case your guys want to go and find some very deep, powerful work. There's one called Beyond Forgiveness. And I go into, and I'm just going to swear it out because it's the only way that I can say this. I go into the bullshit around what we think forgiveness is. We think forgiveness is this thing that goes, I'm sorry, I've been bad, please forgive me, let's be friends. That is not forgiveness at all. Even, and people aren't going to like me for this one, even the Ho'oponopono stuff. It's all multiple layers of bullshit woven into the spiritual community to keep what? To keep our heart here and our pineal gland there, so we never gain access to our full mastery, except that we now are able to. So part of my offerings, and I really just suggest people go into the online shop and just let their heart guide them. But if they're looking for very powerful work, Beyond Forgiveness is one of the very, very powerful online teaching courses. I think it's a 6 or an 8 week, I can't remember, course that really gives you access to your innocence. And when you get access to your innocence, then you can overcome shame. Then you can overcome blame. Because I can tell you the formulas. I can tell you right now, forgiveness equals innocence, equals the dropping of shame, dropping of blame, but you've got to do the energetic work to have that imprint live inside of you as a field of experience. So that's why, beyond all of the jibber jabber that I do on social media, which is kind of prolific, I've got the energetic work. And before I forget, Amrit, I have got an amazing coupon code for you and your listeners to get 20% off everything in the Kerry K shop. So I'm sure you'll put it in the video description, but you guys, in case you forget, it's this dude's name. It's Amrit number 20, huh? Amrit 20. That's going to be your coupon code. Go get it.
That is super kind of you. That is super kind of you. Thank you. There's talking about energetics. I mean, just to, because I'm still super fascinated about what's going on with the pyramids, the halls of Amenti, these energetic, like some people have proclaimed them to be like, and I know like how limited our worldview is, even as I start to say the word like magma hydraulics stations, you know, and it's like, okay, again, we're talking about plumbing, which is, you know, again, very 3D. But one of the things in there that you like energetics in your container is that you recently started talking about the Lemurian crystal. Can you tell us a little bit behind that? Like, can you tell us what's going on? There's been an activation. Like, I just wanted to go into the energetics of that. Wanted to understand more.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you bring that up, because that preceded the pyramid disclosure that's just starting. You guys, I can't stress this enough. The pyramid disclosure, it's at its infancy. It's still going to take a couple of years for us to get the full picture of what I'm beginning to share with you guys now. So don't imagine, because a lot of people do this, they go, oh, it's been debunked. Oh, Kerry, you're behind the times. You have no idea how many times this is going to be debunked and brought back and debunked and brought. Get used to it. It's an ongoing thing, because there are so many people with a vested interest in us not knowing this stuff. But nonetheless, it originated when the Lemurian crystal became activated. And I actually felt very called. When was it? It was March of 2025. I felt very, very called to go to Mauritius, not knowing why. And in case your guys don't know where Mauritius is, most of my guys didn't either. I said to them, I'm in Mauritius. I did this online call and I said, hey, everyone, I'm in Mauritius. And so many people went, where the hell is that? It's a tiny little dot in the Indian Ocean. If you think of where Madagascar is and you think of where India is, draw a line between the two, but more on the Madagascar side. That's this tiny pinprick called Mauritius. So I went there. And when I was there, I still had no idea what I was doing there, except on the very day that I was doing my live call with my online community, it just came through. Oh, Kerry, this is why you're here. The Lemurian crystal is coming alive. It's getting activated. And what the Lemurian crystal is part of the memory of our ancestors that was deposited deep into the consciousness. So please don't be literal. They weren't sitting there with a spade and digging down into the earth and burying things. They were imprinting into an energetic crystal their original higher consciousness of the original beings that we were before we got dumbed down into the false matrix. These beings who I've referred to as many times as these cosmic creator gods, our essence and our imprint was held inside that Lemurian crystal. And the Lemurian crystal, just in case people think I'm saying that it's in Mauritius or under Mauritius, it's part of a massive underground grid network. Remember, everything is connected. Even in a matrix as manipulated as ours, everything is connected. And many of the original, or we could even think of them as aboriginal, or the original beings of multiple island nations, these were the original Lemurians. And that was global. They weren't isolated to any one particular island. But their original consciousness, which was one of peace, it was one of love, it was one of unity, it was one of communion with the stars, that was all held inside that Lemurian crystal. And as that became activated, which it did, because why? People might say, how did that get activated? It became activated because we human beings started talking to it, started connecting to it. First, we connect to ourselves, then we connect to the cosmic consciousness. And the more we connect to it, the more it grows, the more it activates. So you could say, well, we activate the Lemurian crystal, or vice versa. You could say the Lemurian crystal activated us because we're actually working in symbiosis with each other. Nonetheless, this was what preceded the disclosure about the pyramids, because it's all part of one big picture. It's all part of one big picture. I don't want people to think, oh, this is only about the pyramids. No, there are going to be multiple disclosures coming up about our ancestry and how humanity is way, way, way older than we think it is, and wiser than we could ever have imagined, that we had access to higher technologies that we right now can't even name or consider or comprehend. We can't even understand the technologies that were once our everyday technology. We're going to start getting little wafts and little glimpses throughout not just the course of 2025, but the next couple of years. There's going to be so many spillovers and so many knock-on revelations, almost like there's a game of dominoes going on right now. And one thing is going to lead to the next and the next and the next and the next. And it's just going to echo around the world. And they're going to appear at first as if all these disclosures are unrelated, but they're actually all part of the same revelation, which is, hey, humanity, it's time for you to wake up and see that you are a legacy of cosmic beings. And that legacy is far older and far wiser than you could ever, ever imagine. Part of the thing that I shared with my son the other day, I've got two sons, and my youngest son, Samuel, is 11. We were talking about the caveman. He's very fascinated right now with this concept of caveman. And I said, my baby, there really was this thing called caveman, but he was never our original ancestor. He was just part of where we found ourselves after we had fallen from, I suppose you could say, fallen from grace. Because our planet undergoes multiple ascension cycles. And we can think of these multiple ascension cycles as cycles of it's the incorrect way of seeing it, but this is how we would phrase it as the humans on the surface. We would say there are cyclical patterns on our planet where cataclysms happen. And every time a cataclysm happens on our planet, we lose populations, like in some cases dinosaurs. In some cases, we lose mass populations of human beings. And then we have to start all over again. And then we can show up as the caveman, for example, because we've lost access. Like, imagine if there was a mass solar storm that wiped out all of our technology and we didn't have access to our banks, we didn't have access to water and lights and heating and cars and all the things that make us modern, so-called humans. We would, for want of a better way of saying it, we would become like cavemen. We would become like the way that we envision our ancestors as living off of the land. We would have no choice but to do that for a while. So if people went into our historical record, instead of saying, oh, look, these were very advanced beings, they would probably say, oh, look, these were the cavemen. In a couple of thousand years' time, that's how we could show up if we had one of those mass cyclical devastation events. You see, we haven't had the opportunity to look deep enough to discover that underneath what we think of as caveman are very, very advanced levels of human being.
Hey there, Inspired Souls. Kerry's mentioned Ancestry quite a few times here today, and one of our partners for the podcast is Ancestry.com. And one of the fun things that you can do is go get your DNA results and find out more about your lineage and your history. Like she said, discovering some of these things that have been finally making their way into disclosure teaches a lot about our ancestry and history. So you can find out your literal DNA history and roots through here. But the reason we've partnered with this is because what we really want you to go do, if you're up for it, is actually health and wellness on the other side of that as well. So once you get your DNA data and results, we've got a couple of Inspired Evolution tools focused around your wellness and gene markers. So you get your DNA data, you put it into a gene analysis tool to see which genes are actually recessive on both sides of the family, or which genes are recessive on one side of the family, and which genes are, smoking hot, ready to go. They're all good. And the ones that are recessive on both sides of the family, then you can actually go away and build supplementation to support your diet in that regard. And it's been an absolute game changer for me, if I can be honest, in terms of levels of clarity. I've recently become a parent, and just the way that I can function now is better than when I was 25 and I didn't have kids. Like, it's amazing what actually finally understanding my DNA and how to supplement for that has been so helpful. And that tool is completely free. We're bringing it to you as the Inspired Evolution. But obviously, Ancestry.com, you have to go there and get your DNA results. So we've partnered with them to get you a bit of a discount. So if you can use the discount code using the link below, click your way there, get the DNA results, find out a little bit about your ancestry and also your health and wellness. Yeah, it's interesting because in my mind right now, I'm watching us potentially over the coming 1,000 years becoming a spacefaring species if we honor the planet correctly. Let's just put it politely for a minute. And then our outward exploration, just continuing to, but obviously what you're sharing right now is I'm sure there's a particular school of thought that, we're sort of waging into the external so much because of the sort of like not looking internally, like being even less internal and just continuing to be this spacefaring, external faced sort of species. And yet the invitation to you can actually travel beyond spaces if you continue to actually dive deeper within to yourself is quite a profound revelation that's being instilled within me in this podcast today.
I'm so glad, because this is a rite of passage for all of us to have some kind of initiation that restores our connection to our potential. It's almost like this harmonic comes back online again, and we can think clearly again and go, oh, but wait a minute. I am not as small as I imagined myself to be. I am not as weak as I imagined myself to be. I am more than I can name. I am more than my thoughts can orientate themselves around. That's the absolute truth. And I love the moments that we all get when we dial into that truth. Yeah.
I mean, Kerry, for me, that's a wrap. But is there anything else you wanted to share before I close up the episode for today? There is so much you've shared so generously.
There's always more. There's always more.
I mean, last episode we went super deep on the false matrix and the organic matrix, and really, like, even till date, the episode was titled "The Best Description of, like, you know, the 3D, 5D, you know, ever." And people literally in the comment section were just like, "Oh my god, like this legitimately, like such a clickbaity title," and it literally lived up to it. And I was like, it was literally just the best explanation we ever got. And so, you know, I will put a link to that on screen to follow this episode if people want to dive into that content, but also your YouTube channel into the comments below, and your shop, and also the community, like you said. I think there's plenty going on.
I think next time we meet, it's a whole other discussion, and it's a whole other topic, but a proposal that's just come to me now. So if it comes to me now, I'm going to blurt it out.
Channeled it.
We should talk about next time. We should talk about the pole shift and the mechanics of ascension.
I'd love that. You've got me intrigued. Me intrigued. Okay, we'll stay tuned for that episode coming out next week. No, it'll take us a minute to record that. But yeah, sounds fascinating. Kerry, as always, you are so generous with yourself, your insights, and I mean, just your humility and the grace, the way that you carry everything that you carry as well. And it's so easy to say thank you for your time here today. And yet, you know, even before the podcast, there's so much going on in your life, and, you know, you carry this work with such grace, and it is your life's work. So for me, thank you for you. You know, I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, beautiful darling. Thank you, everyone. Beautiful to be with you. We obviously chose to be here now. And I think, honestly, that we don't understand how exciting our time is right now. Like, something that drives me nuts is how many people say, "Oh, nothing's happening. I wish something was happening." And I just feel like saying, open your damn eyes, because so much is happening. But it's like you have to be able to tune in at the inner level to feel that rumbling potential. And then you know it's can only show up at the physical level. It can only move from this energetic, almost like a volcano about to burst kind of feeling. It has to ripple into physical reality. But everybody's waiting for that moment to validate what they feel right now. And you know, if you have the eyes to see it, it's all taking place right now.
You, Inspired Soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode, even if I can say so myself, touchwood. Kerry is always amazing when she comes on. Now, I wanted to take a moment to all of you that are subscribed to the podcast. I just want to honor and acknowledge you. Thank you so much, because honestly, like I say, everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription. These conversations are enabled by your subscription. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Help us championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the planet together. Join the movement, hit subscribe. It helps with everything that we're doing here. I cannot thank you enough. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and a thumbs up. It helps share it around the internet. And now on screen, like we discussed, an opportunity to dive deeper into the 3D, 5D false matrix, organic matrix split with Kerry K. So go on, click on that, and I'll see you over there.